When the great necromancer's foul sorcery coursed through the greatest civilization in mankind's history, the collective dynasties of generation upon generation awoke from their eternal slumber and battled for supremacy in an epic struggle that would come to be known as the War of Kings. There had been countless rulers during the long existence of Nehekhara, each possessing a fierce drive and ambition, but these monarchs awoke from death in a land where they were but a dime a dozen, and before long, they were at each other's ruined throats as the merciless sun beat down upon their bleached bones. But when Settra the Imperishable, King of Kings, strode forth from his great pyramid at the head of a powerful army, the others bowed their heads, or lost them, for he was a god-king without equal, and would not share his rule. The consolidation of his power was swift and brutal, with only Arkhan the Black, the Lich King, establishing a lasting rival kingdom, his dark presence a constant reminder of all the evil Nagash had wrought. And so the reign of 1,000,000 years began, but that was not to say that there weren't external threats. 1,000 years before the birth of Sigmar, Nehekhara was invaded by lizardmen from the Southlands, searching for lost plaques looted from their temple cities. They plunged deep into the heartlands of the Empire before their rampage was finally stopped at the capital of Khemri, as focused rays from the gold-capped pyramids scorched the flesh from their bones. And the children of the Old Ones had not returned in force since. But something was brewing, the mightiest invasion of an age, and as the fearsome lion of the desert strode forth to defend his kingdom once again, he called upon a hated rival, for both stood to lose everything should their legendary homeland fall. Lord Mazdamundi had always been a warlike Slann, driven by a thirst for knowledge that led him to a stunning realization as he studied the ancient plaques of his creators. The Lizardmen had utterly failed in creating the foundation for the Great Plan, a base paved with the bones of all lesser races. Without the extermination of the barbarous greenskin, the putrid Northmen, or the blight of the undead, further divination would be ultimately fruitless, so he steered the course of his people towards unrelenting war, determined to reclaim the lost knowledge of his patron gods and to eradicate the impure from the world forever. Perhaps no two sentient beings on the planet were better suited to the task than Mazdamundi and Kroq, one almost a divinity in his godlike power, approaching omniscience and able to move mountains with his mind, the other a ferocious and ruthlessly intelligent predator with an impossibly long and impressive resume in dealing death. The Old One's artifacts that still rested in the vaults of the Great Pyramid of Settra held a significance to the Lizardmen that could not be overstated. Icons of devotion and power that channeled the energies of the creator race, and to have them rest in the clutches of the living dead was an affront to nature itself. Lord Mazdamundi parted the Great Sea, and the primal furies of the deep jungles of Lustria marched forth, ready to be unleashed in the far deserts of accursed land. And so we are joined here today on Steel Faith Overhaul for a fierce battle between the Lizardmen and the Tomb Kings, Kroq and Lord Mazdamundi plunging deep into the heartlands of Settra's empire, while the Imperishable calls upon the services of the Lich King himself, who knows all too well that Nagash can't return if the Black Tower and the rest of their shared homeland is obliterated by a vengeful mage priest. The map is the Springs of Eternal Life, a gorgeous one by Young Buck that blends the best of both unfortified settlement and open field battles into one happy little canvas that I'm sure would make Bob Ross very pleased. And I figured this would be a great opportunity to showcase some of the Blessed Lizardmen spawnings, with a completely unique mechanic in SFO. So, amongst the traditional Saurus and Skinks, and under the watchful gaze of the last defender of Zodal, the Blessed Spawnings grant unique effects depending on what you choose. The Blessed Spawning of Huanchi, the Jaguar God, grants additional speed, melee attack, and most importantly, stalk, which as you might imagine on a gigantic effing Carnosaur, is pretty goddamn terrifying. The thing is a monster. Stalk on a Carnosaur is brutal, and it looks awesome too. Tepok the Inscrutable grants 25% additional magic resistance and perfect vigor. Quetzal the Protector grants 10 armor, physical, and missile resistance, and Chotek grants flame resistance. So essentially, these allow you to tailor these blessed units, which are capped at 1 of each by the way, to counter specific units or strategies your opponent might try to field, and you can do so on the battlefield itself which is pretty cool. You don't have to just do it on the pre-battle screen. Although in practice, some are clearly better than others, so the balance between each could definitely be worked on a bit. But once you activate a blessing, that's it. You're locked in. You can't alternate between them once you've settled on one. So we've got Arkhan the Black here and his gigantic Tomb King's army with the Hydro Titan striding gloriously in and amongst the ranks of Tomb Guard and Skeleton Warriors. Some Tomb Scorpions on the field, and of course, Arkhan the Black himself with the death magic, able to drop some Purple Sun Aziriuses or Fate Bunas on top of the Lizardmen heads. So you don't see Arkhan the Black and Settra working every day together, but as I've explained, these are extenuating circumstances. When a gigantic Lizardmen invasion is coming your way, you gotta band together or your homeland will burn. And if there's one thing Settra can't abide, it's his pyramids getting blown up by a bunch of angry dinos. So, I am playing as Settra the Imperishable and the Tomb Kings. Jack is playing as the Last Defenders of Zodal. Newport is playing as Lord Mazdamundi, and the Red Axeman controls Nagash's little lackey. And also in SFO are the Legions of Legend from the Tomb Kings campaign. The Venom Knights of Asaf have hit the field, one of the nastiest units in the game, hands down. They just have an absurd stat line and killing power, but they're well over 2,000 gold, so it's quite a big investment. And as that happens, Blessed Carnosaur has already sprung its ambush, pouncing on a group of Ushabti with great bows with that 99 speed. Must be entirely unsatisfying for a predator of that stature to bite into stone statues all day, and a bunch of bony boys. Can't imagine they have a whole lot of fun fighting against Tomb Kings when they just want to be biting into something that's flesh and blood. But over here, Kroq, first one into the fighting as you'd expect from the legendary Lord of the Last Defenders, getting in there, and the swiftness of Ansel popping down on top of a bunch of the Screaming Skull catapults. But as the Blessed Carnosaur continues forward, Venom Knights of Asaf and Settra astride that resplendent Kemrian War Sphinx, making sure that Carnosaur can't get into the meatier parts of the army, and if he gets poisoned, might be in trouble. But the battle is already about to start between Mazdamundi and Arkhan the Black as the lines move up now. Chosen of the Gods getting some good shots in, and a really nice Shem's Burning Gaze from the Hydro Titan, ripping through the flank of some of those infantry. But the dinosaurs and the predatory instincts, as the Deliverance of Itza, or rather I always say that, Ruination of Cities goes off in the middle of the Tomb King's army. Did some pretty good damage there as the Ushabti charge in and start laying about in the middle of those skinks. A lot of javelins coming in. They're going to take a lot of damage, and the Kroq scores are backing it up. And it's a lot of friendly fire and a lot of blood as a bunch of those skinks get bisected on those nasty dual-wielding weapons. But Citadel charging up the center and knocking a few of them flying about 30 feet through the air. Hydro Titan moving up, and that thing can pound pretty much any dino into the sand. It just lacks the mobility that something like a Carnosaur has. Really good early engagements from Newport, supporting his skinks really well with the Crocodilian Fury of the Kroq scores, and shifting over on the ridgeline where the Casket of Souls and Screaming Skull catapults were. Kroq is kind of in bad shape right now as the Sphinx of Usak begins pummeling him, bullying him a bit. The other army for the Last Defenders is moving up the ridgeline now and shifting back over. Kroq and the Skinks working in tandem, trying to chunk their way through the Tomb Guard and Skeleton Warriors. Hydro Titan using that staff, smashing down the top of that Ankylosaurus, and the Ushabti are in the thick of the fighting as the Kroq Scarvet, and Lord Mazdamundi anchoring the line all get into the thick of the fighting. Liber Necrus down on the field, granting 44% physical resistance in a big AoE. Will be really useful in that engagement. Skink Chiefs overhead on the Pterodons, trying to provide a bit of range firepower. And now the Chosen of the Gods and the Great Bow Ushabti getting some really beautiful shots into the center of the Saurus as they move up the hill. And this is a D-Day approach right now. They're getting destroyed, decapitated by all this artillery fire from range. And the Saurus are looking at a very difficult approach up this hill in between the cliffs into a pretty brutal choke point where the Tomb Kings might be able to take full advantage of their vortexes and powerful spells. Mr. Hydro Titan, I need a hero, unleashing some Kryptonian laser vision into the meat of the horde, toasting up some lizards, slacking Mazdamundi right there to enjoy the view, with Realm of Souls already into tier 2 for Arkhan the Black and his army. Tomb Scorpion in the back there, showing them what it means to be Shirai Ryu. The martial arts, the Mortal Kombat is strong with this one. Impaling some incredibly unfortunate skanks, doing some nice 360 kicks and spins, and just generally being a menace in the back lines. Seriously fantastic animations on that thing. Never get tired of seeing it. It's so much fun to watch. And there is a Scarvet on top of a big angry Carnosaur running over and bowling over Arkhan the Black. And he'll need some protection or he will die very quickly in melee combat with that melee monster. Some Cold One Riders moving forward, running over skeletons over on the Arkhan the Black right flank. And yeah, I would not say that this is going particularly well for Arkhan and his army right now. Hyro Titan will be able to stand and fight for a very long time, but with Temple Guard, Zlok in a great position to start crumbling those skellies, and it's not looking super good over there, but long way to go yet. Front Ranxosaurus already routing, and a Skull Storm going down here. Sandstorm rising from the earth, ripping through the right flank of the Last Defender's army, going through a bunch of the Sora Spears, racking up some very decent damage here as more and more archer fire and those Chosen of the Gods Ushabti get some great shots into the advancing Lizardmen horde. The Blessed Carnosaur, look at how fast that thing is. Almost 100 move speed, going right after Settra and the Khemrian War Sphinx, who tries to disengage. Tomb Guard moving up to reinforce, making sure that that Carnosaur can't get too aggressive early on. But that's going to be a tough fight for either side as Tomb Guard, Skeleton Warriors, and the Ushabti move up and look to close in a close quarters combat. And a lot of the Saurus are already rampaging, which means they're below half health, means they've taken a beating on the way in. But that Blessed Carnosaur has so much mobility, but that will get mitigated a lot by the Venom Knights of Asaph with their poison, and that might make it very hard for that very expensive Carnosaur to disengage. Poison is such a game changer when you're talking about mobility on the field, especially if you're a big target. And Saurus have gotten into the thick of the fighting now, covered in their own blood, and Ushabti will certainly be able to do some damage here. But Temple Guard reinforcing, and they do have that AP, they do have that bonus versus large, so a great unit to throw into the midst of those Ushabti. But they don't have their entire army over on that side of the battlefield. The cavalry contingent and Kroq haven't gotten into the flank. They've been supporting Mazdamundi by trying to take on the artillery, and that has left Arkhan the Black's minions in shambles and absolute ruins here, with only a skeleton crew still up behind, while the majority of the army crumbles. A Tomb Scorpion, not long for this world, surrounded by Crocodilian Kroxigors and a Basilodon with a Revivification Crystal. That's a tough fight against that many dinos and large units for the Tomb Kings. Without support from the Necropolis Knights or Necrosphinx, taking down all that armor and health has proved to be very problematic. The Lich King is still alive and might still have a role to play. Some cycle charging done from those Necro Serpents, and a Basilodon trying to anchor the line here as the Sora Spears are being overwhelmed by the monster and infantry combination from the Ushabti, Tomb Guard, and Skeleton Warriors. And Settra the Imperishable is making his move now, chasing after that Blessed Carnosaur, covered in blood, and the Khemrian War Sphinx will do some work on him, especially if you give Settra the incantation of Cursed Blades. It can give you some really nice armor-piercing damage, and really let him smash around a Carnosaur in melee combat, and that is going to do some damage there. Charging in from the flank, painting the sand red with some blood. And Lizardmen are definitely on the back foot here without the support from Kroq, without that morale radius, without, honestly, their whole army being there. Yeah, they've kind of gotten smashed here, and their center is breaking as the Skinks seek to retreat, pounded by the ethereal unit, that Legion of Usirian. But Arkhan the Black, like I said, still alive. He has made it over from the catastrophe over on the left flank, and there was definitely some miscommunication between Settra and Arkhan, which isn't that surprising if you know the lore particularly well in Warhammer Fantasy. They didn't support each other too well, but both armies kind of lack some mobility, which has been a problem so far, as we see the Legion of Usirian getting in there, finishing off some of these rampaging Saurus. The fact that the Necroserpents and the Necrosphinxes, even those units, are not particularly fast, and they're so expensive, sending them from one side of the battlefield to the other, especially with the deployment so far away, Settra and Arkhan working kind of isolated from each other, that has definitely been a problem for the Tomb Kings. But with the fact that the last defenders have been smashed on this side, even though the balance bar is a little bit in the Lizardmen's favor right now, certainly not even close to being over. We've got a long way to go in this battle, and lots of action still to come. The Khemrian War Sphinx making sure that the rest of those routing units do not come back. Realm of Souls is triggered for the third time now. So the summon can come at any point, and that could be very nice in the back lines to deal with some of those skink skirmishers once the final engagement begins in earnest here. And you can see the Last Defender's cavalry and Kroq working together, looking to go through the settlement itself to try to flank and get around in and behind Settra, while Mazdamundi and his army get ready for the final engagement as well. Khemrian War Sphinx charging forward, and even though there is some skink skirmisher fire coming in now, some javelins and some blow darts, I think the Khemrian War Sphinx shouldn't have too much trouble smashing apart that Ankylosaurus. And then once that happens, no more healing for the Lizardmen, who I believe have already used up all their cold-blooded for Kroq. Big flock of doom there, though, on top of a lot of units overcast, I believe. That's going to do some serious damage. Remember, Magic and Steel Faith Overhaul can do some serious work for you. And yeah, it hit 3 pretty important infantry units. The Tomb Kings need all the infantry they can possibly get. Usirian Legion walking after these skink skirmishers and having a little bit of trouble catching up to them. Kind of hilarious. Reminds me of the Return of the King scene with all the undead sweeping through Minas Tirith. But they're probably not going to be able to catch up to them. I will say, one of the most annoying things in this game, period, in Total War Warhammer 2, is getting kited by skinks. They're so annoying to deal with. Those poison blow darts can be just so obnoxious, slow you down, and they're quick, and they just are slippery and get out of so many situations. And here come Necropolis Knights, Venom Knights of Asaf from the flank, and they're gonna munch through the remnants of the Saurus and Temple Guard. They're just gonna eat them for dinner. I think those are actually just regular Saurus, the shields, but man, that was brutal. Just completely eviscerated them, and that is pretty much the end for the Last Defenders over on this side of the battlefield. But now, the Tomb Kings and Settra the Imperishable have to rethink the entire engagement and look to the west, where Mazdamundi and the remnants of Kroq's army will come from, where the cavalry are coming from, a bunch of skinks getting their heads blown off by the Chosen of the Gods. And they're moving up now, looking to get very aggressive here and overwhelm what remains of the Tomb King's army. Some really good shots coming in from those Chosen of the Gods, those Ushabti with great bows, and these meat shields are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Skinks not very expensive. They're going to absorb a lot of fire here as the Pterodons overhead. Like to do a little bit of skirmishing, just be annoying, but the horned ones, or rather the cold ones, from the left flank of the Tomb Kings are looking to charge in. And there are Tomb Guard with halberds right there. Necropolis Knights charging forward, getting a good charge off. The Last Defenders will not get their charge off, and this is a good engagement as Arkhan the Black drops a big purple Son of Xerius. You can see a ton of skinks getting jibbed there in the back. Last Defenders looking to charge in here, and more of Necropolis Knights and the Necrosphinx now. The Sphinx of Usek, one of the most terrifying monsters in the game, getting smacked by Hashem's Burning Gaze, the Hand of the Gods from Kroq. He'll do some serious work in the cavalry fight as another ruination of cities goes down from Mazdamundi in the center of the Tomb King's line. Those twin scything blades gonna etch a terrible toll to the middle of all of these cavalry. Kroq, though, if he gets in from the flank, could do a lot of damage there for sure. But Skink Hero in the middle of the fighting now, fighting some Ushabti on top of his Pterodon. Not really a great melee combatant that's surrounded by monsters, but certainly creating some space for the rest of the line here. And a lot of arrow fire, a lot of Chosen of the Gods shots going in. A lot of spells going down too. Another Vortex spell going off, and some Ushabti getting summoned in the back lines as Kroq gets in the thick of the fighting. And with their bonus force infantry and their AP, they will smash through those skeletons. But the Tomb Guard, and the Tomb Guard with halberds especially, should be able to hold the line here. That was a really nice Skull Storm, actually going through a bunch of the Lizardmen. Khemrian War Sphinx and Necrosphinx fighting back to back, surrounded, outnumbered. But can they hold on? Can Settra the Imperishable and the Tomb Kings take this battle? Banishment going off in the back, ripping through some of those skeleton archers, and so many flyers overhead too, looking to tie down those archers in the back. Skeleton Spearmen holding the line for now, and the Skink Skirmishers, most of them out of ammunition, might look to seek melee combat out pretty soon here as Mazdamundi and Zlak charge to the center. Just a monster mash now. So many infantry and monster units committed to the fight. Everything getting thrown in here into one big gigantic blob, and now it is who has the power, who has the ability to hold on, who has the sustain. Tomb King's infantry line holding surprisingly sturdy here, actually winning a lot of their engagements. I mean, the charge defense against all, charge defense against large, and just the holding power of those Tomb Guard with halberds definitely helping them out in the sustained melee combat. If they can take down Mazdamundi or Kroq, then it could turn things in their favor, but the balance board is definitely in Lizardmen's favor right now, and they have a lot of dinos. Their infantry power is definitely being kind of beaten up at the moment, and in the back, the Skink Skirmishers are actually getting into melee and shutting down the ranged firepower from all the skeleton archers, which is a big deal as well. I mean, those Skink Skirmishers aren't great melee combatants, but they're cheap, and with those kind of numbers, they can definitely do some decent work for you, for sure. So they're definitely doing a good job right now, making sure that those archers can't fire. And the Pterodon Skink heroes are still somehow alive after all this, after getting thrown into melee and kind of being fragile. They're still around, but big Patraz Vengeance going off there. Another Swiftness of Itzel, and there's a Vortex being cast on top of those Skink Skirmishers in the back. That's a big blob that could do some serious damage here. A Settra summoning a Skull Storm whirlwind that rips right through the heart of those skinks, devouring everything in its path in the name of the goddess Sekhmet, the Green Witch of Morslib. And that was pretty big, actually. That killed a ton of infantry right there. And Tomb Kings need all the help they can get as their Ushabti summons begin to crumble, and they're being overwhelmed here by the dinosaur Scarvet being stabbed repeatedly into its tough, scaled hide by those Tomb Guard with halberds and the Ushabti. But is it enough? Can the Tomb Kings hold on here? Settra's still in the fight, still doing what he can for his army, but balance bar so heavily in the Lizardmen's favor now. Arkhan the Black about to go down to, I guess, a Skink hero, a rather weak end to a very powerful individual, though I'm sure we'll see him again at some point. Settra, not much health left on his Khimrian War Sphinx, although it's a little bit misleading because his HP pool is so big. When you see only a sliver of health, it's still probably like 2,000 or 3,000 health. But skeletons and Tomb Guard being overwhelmed here, and the Lizardmen at this point are in the ascendancy. There's little the Tomb Kings can do to win it, but a valiant effort nonetheless. A very, very close game and a really enjoyable one. I mean, again, I've talked about it so much. Maps are so important in multiplayer games, especially if you're trying to do scenarios or themed battles. And oh my god, look at that Settra charge. This is the most brutal thing I've seen all game, and this has been a brutal battle. Probably got 20 or 30 kills off the charge at least. Just ripping through them. Glorious charge from Settra there. And yeah, I mean, this one was just a blast. There are those themed battles you do occasionally that just make you feel like, wow, this is Warhammer. And this battle felt like quintessential Warhammer to me. Getting to see the Tomb Kings, the big boys in action, Lizardmen in action, Kroq, Mazdamundi, Settra, Arkhan, just made for a really awesome battle here. Mazdamundi and Zlak gonna get into the thick of the fighting one more time, finish off these crumbling skeletons and Tomb Guard. Settra charges forward, tries to take something down, anything, to make it so that Nehekhara does not fall to this Lizardmen invasion. But yeah, like I said, too much, too many dinos, probably not enough coordination between Arkhan and Settra to win this one. Probably should have deployed a little bit closer to each other so they could support each other better with the Necrosphinx or the Necro Serpents. But yeah, super fun battle. And now, Lizardmen have taken the field and will look to move on Khimri itself, burn into the ground, and take those old ones' artifacts back. Venom Knights of Asaf and Settra were amazing in this one, especially the Venom Knights. They are an incredible unit. Maybe the best monstrous cavalry in the game currently, at least in SFO. I don't know how they would do against the Royal Altdorf Griffites, but I wouldn't be surprised if they could actually win that engagement 1v1. I'd have to look at their stats a little bit closer, but they did work. Mazdamundi did very well, had some really nice ruination of cities. Settra had some really great vortexes, and Arkhan the Black's army, they kind of got overwhelmed by the Kroq from Mazdamundi. Kroq himself got well over 100 kills. He could have died early on. If he hadn't been able to wriggle away from the Sphinx of Usek early on near that artillery, he would have died. But there were just a lot of units that made a big impact. Honestly, I think the biggest thing was having some Necropolis Knights with halberds or a Necrosphinx or two would have been super beneficial for Arkhan the Black's army, because those Kroq, all those large, just kind of overwhelmed him in the melee fight, and he got rolled over. But I should have done a better job of supporting him for sure. I did send Sphinx of Usek and some Tombguard Halberd to help protect his artillery early on, but definitely could have done a better job coordinating and using my units to help him out because he needed help there and I didn't give it to him. So that was absolutely my bad. Hope you guys enjoyed this battle. Really fun one. And I'll see you next time. Indie Pride signing out for now.